Welcome to Jazz Chats with Cool Cats. We are aware that you may experience a minor echo during the conversation portion of tonight's program. Thank you for your patience as we continue to improve on our audio and visual techniques during our programming. Enjoy!
Welcome to Kerrytown Concert House, and thank you for tuning in to our program this evening. You know, one thing that I love almost as much as hearing remarkable artists give amazing performances is hearing them share stories and anecdotes. Listening to them talk in between pieces about what inspires them, where their passions lie, and what their process is. This year, we're taking the virtual opportunity to present a new kind of programming experience for you that we are calling Conversation Concerts. And tonight, it's all about Jazz Chats with Cool Cats, hosted by drummer Pete Siers. Once a month, Pete will be inviting special guests to come and explore their passion for jazz through conversation and music. I've given Pete the same advice he probably gives most of his jazz students. Listen carefully, respond innovatively, and see where the moments take you. Let's watch what happens.
we're here at the Kerrytown Concert House, in the house, and we're trying something new. We hope that perhaps in lieu of a ticket price, you would contribute to the house to keep it vital. We all need that. We all need the music, and we all need each other, but we have some roadblocks at this time. So thank you for joining us. This is an honor for me to bring in one of our area's true artists, and I'm lucky enough to call him a friend and colleague. We've played together in all kinds of different circumstances, and I really thought that he needs to come to the concert house to show what he's got, because the people that support this particular venue really have an investment in the artists, and that's kind of how this relationship works. So it is my ultimate pleasure to bring to you Scott Gwinnell on this first Jazz Chat. So, Scott.
Thank you, Pete.
So much to talk about. Let's just talk about that first piece. What did you play?
It was a Miles Davis tune entitled Solar. It was a tune I heard a long time ago, and we were talking beforehand about just experiences and stuff like that we might have had when we were younger, and that song came to me immediately because I remember being taught that and just being attracted to it immediately, just being a little bit different. And so I thought I'd kind of like not only start out with it, but start out playing it in a little bit different way.
Love it. Fantastic treatment and extremely creative. That's what I am just enamored by, your ability to follow an idea to bring to the next idea. So we'll get into that a little bit later in this conversation, but I want people to know, like, to me, you seem like an ultimate product, almost, so to speak, of how the Detroit school has evolved and your timing in it. And so can you give us a little idea about where you're from, where you were born, and how you got into music?
Yeah, I was born at St. John Hospital in Detroit, Michigan, but grew up on the east side in a city called Harper Woods, which is right there on the border of Detroit, and pretty much meant that I was advantaged to taking part of all the great things that Detroiters do, playing the different clubs, attending different clubs, being at the jazz festival, just pretty much being a Detroit jazz musician, both when I was a beginner with studying with Bess Bonier as a kid and Matt Michaels, and then later on as a professional musician. So I got to enjoy playing with all the great musicians that Detroit and Ann Arbor have to offer. Back starting in the late '80s as a high school kid, and then up till now, where I still obviously play professionally.
This is an interesting question that I have had a lot of fun talking to other cats about. Was there one event that really stood out when you were young that just made you get bit by the jazz bug?
Absolutely, Pete. I'm so glad you asked me, because this story involves you. When I mentioned a second ago that I studied with the great Detroit pianist Bess Bonier when I was a kid, and I was really starting to get into writing for my high school big band, and she was very encouraging in that. And she said, finish a chart for them, and see it through, which I did. And I remember going to her studio and being a little bit disappointed about the results, mostly about what I wrote. And she said, well, it might not have been completely about what you wrote. And she said, I've got this friend who lives in Ann Arbor. His name is Paul Keller, and he just started a big band not too long ago, and we're going to go out there and we'll have them play your chart. So scared me to death because, first of all, like I didn't even go to Ann Arbor. I'm from the east side of Detroit, and we're going to go out to a jazz club. Secondly, I wasn't legally able to drive yet. I still don't know how my mom enabled me to do this, but so Bess she was visually impaired, and she was the adult in the car who was seeing me through while I drove to Ann Arbor. Believe it or not, the whole way she knew every turn, every which way to get there, which was awesome for, because I needed it, because I did get lost a couple times. But we eventually got to the Bird of Paradise Club where Paul and you and the rest of the cats played. And I remember, even before I walked in the building, walking down that hallway, that I heard this sound, and not just heard a sound, but I felt this energy. And feeling that energy walking down the hallway up until the door was open and hearing that big band just hitting, like boom, the shouts, the solos and everything. I think it might have been that moment where I was like, okay, you know what, you got me. I'm in this. And so the funny thing is I brought the chart with me, you guys played it. It was nice to hear, but it was everything else that happened that evening was more important to me. It was like hearing you play the drums, hearing a drummer who connected with the band like that. You brought so much energy to the thing, hearing a lead trumpet player and a full section of horn. So both as a writer and a pianist, I was just like, okay, sign me up. And then I thought, of course, well, these guys are untouchable. I'm just going to kind of like slink into a corner and just not even bother them. And you guys were so welcoming. And so I learned not only that you guys were all great musicians in the professional world there, but you were welcoming of young people, and you felt that me as a young 15-year-old was worthy to come talk to, not only to say, hey man, great job, but hey man, you got to fix this in your chart, you got to fix this in your chart. And so supportive but nurturing, and when you had to be, like deal out a little bit of truth. So I thought this is a world that I could stand to be in. I really love this, and I'll always thank Bess for bringing me that night. And I really regret getting lost there and on the way home, and I really didn't make, she wasn't too happy about that, but it was a night I'll never forget. That was January of 1990. I'll remember that. And you were involved, Paul Keller, Harvey Reid, Mark Hines was there, Chris Case, Paul Finkbinder, and still I play with some of these guys today, and I feel so lucky to be part of this group of creative musicians that gets to play with one another.
I vaguely remember that, and I remember the chart, and it was a big deal for Bess to be in the house, for her being almost blind. It took a lot for her to get there, and she was Detroit's first lady of jazz for many, many years. So it was an honor, but she also was really happy to introduce you to us, and that was, I vaguely remember. It was a great time, and Bird of Paradise really had a lot of, at that particular time, everybody that participated and really took a lot of those lessons to heart really are doing well in the whole jazz world. So let me ask you that, as you progress, you're writing for big band, your high school big band, and how did that manifest as things opened up after high school? Like how did you set your sights on the next round? What was coming next?
Well, even though I was sold in music and I loved it, I still was not professionally gonna go into music, and I decided with my family that we were gonna I was gonna go into business. And so I ended up going to Western Michigan University, and even before, and this should tell you everything, that So the first place I went was not the business building. I went to the music building there. It's in Dalton. And I found myself walking through there, and I heard your big band warming up, going to play, actually, I think the Detroit Jazz Festival that year. So they were warming up, getting ready for a performance there. And I don't think I ever went to a business class. I had one business class that semester, and I'd like to tell you that I dropped the class, and my mom might be watching this, so I think I dropped the class and I just did not attend, but I did from that point on just go to music classes and change my major to music, and I played trombone at the time, so I played trombone in their jazz orchestra, and got exposed to other great writers through that experience, and got to up my craft, because not only hearing great writers great professional writers, but other great writers who went to school there, great musicians, that inspired me to work even harder. I had cats that were going there when I was there were Xavier Davis. Xavier was a senior and already could play piano so well. John Wojciechowski, Matt Hughes, Keith Hall was there at the time. Keith, who's now I think back at Western playing drums. But even in that time, I used to go around. I'd find out when Xavier was practicing with his quartet, and I'd camp out in the practice room next to him, sometimes for hours, just because I knew they were going to be there at some point, and then I just put my ear to the wall and listened to those guys, and I was already I'm so into jazz at that point, and even though I didn't, I was kind of trying to figure things out. I definitely knew I loved it and had passion for music, but it took guys like that to hear that weren't just recordings, or people like Bess, who was a couple generations older, but to hear people my own age do it, I think that really like cinched it, because I was like, wow, people my age can play this music as well as Xavier did, and Wojo did. So, yeah.
So, did you finish? Did you get a bachelor's of music, or what? How did that?
I was a trombone major and a classical trombone major, and as good as the trombone teacher was there, he was not a jazz player, and I met my second grade teacher, Matt Michaels, in my sophomore year there, and he said, we have a jazz teacher at Wayne State. Why don't you come study with us? So I transferred my junior year to Wayne State and started studying trombone, but then liked Matt so much and got along with him so well that I switched to jazz piano, and the rest is history. I played jazz piano at Wayne State.
And did you go on to graduate school?
I did. I actually went back to Wayne State for my graduate degree. I had already, believe it or not, got a teaching gig down at a place called University of Toledo, not too far from here, and they strongly encouraged me to get that degree if they were going to hire me as a teacher, because even back then, they wanted teachers with master's degrees. So I wasn't completely finished with my degree, but I was just kind of getting it in small doses, and that I just soon finished it and started teaching.
So, taking this passion and kind of instilling it and then sharing it as an educator has it's interesting, because some people really gravitate toward that and others, don't. Did you have early success at teaching?
I never wanted to be a teacher when I was a kid, even though my dad was a teacher, his dad was a teacher, and I think his dad was a teacher. I've got it in my blood, I guess.
You do.
But I wanted no part of teaching whatsoever until I was in my early 20s, when I went to work at a teaching studio, and realized that there was a lot of reward in making other people learn music, and especially in a studio where you have to take whoever comes in your door for a half hour, whether they've been playing for a while or they're brand new to music, and in a half hour you have to make them leave with something that they can take with them to make themselves a little better at playing piano. And yeah, then I kind of started like seeing the value in teaching and kind of giving part, not only part of yourself to someone else, but to check yourself to make sure you're doing the right thing so you can tell them the right thing to do. So I saw very selfish in me in teaching too.
Right. So you have had a lot of formal education through college, getting an advanced degree and so on, but you also have had an unusual amount of mentoring in your
Yes.
background. And I kind of want to talk about that mentoring piece because the educational thing it's regimented and documented. You get this, you receive this. So, but the mentorship has lots of other qualities, and you've already kind of touched on this in a big way about how Bess had an effect on you. Can you speak to like the mentorship and just kind of basically this, the Detroit and our whole region has had a long history of mentorship. And I think in other areas that are really have great jazz scenes, that has also occurred. But could you speak to that a little bit?
Sure. Where do I start with mentorship? My gosh. In all aspects of music, I mean, think about when you're watching a clip of music or you're sitting in the audience watching people on stage, you're only seeing a part of what makes that performance go together. And you know, there were elements of everything from like social aspects to, you know, people being able to communicate and having clarity on the bandstand to be able to work with one another, to even being able to get along and chat afterwards or before the gig, you know, because we know socialization is such a big part of our music. To the parts of it where having a mentor to be able to, you know, listen to your problems, to be able to distill issues that may not all be musical, and figure out, you know, like I used that word clarity a second ago. I mean, I think it's a beautiful word in music because, you know, that clarity comes when someone can show you through your unique problems that, you know, this is stuff that other people go through and makes you feel a little better about some of the things, you know, not to mention more of the technical things like, you know, if I just would have like went to class, I would not have known that I needed to learn a lot of music to get through a gig. I wouldn't have known that I need to know how to hook my equipment up a certain way, or I need to know a place to sit, or like I'm playing with so-and-so and I'd tell Matt or Bess, hey, I've got a gig with such and such, and they say, okay, this is how you play with so-and-so, you know? So stuff like that, and in a very respectful way, of course, but it all comes from mentoring, that personal connection with your teacher. And I hate to see it, but I don't see as much mentoring happening today. And I think part of that is the emphasis on, you know, and I realize it's my bread and butter is collegiate teaching, but there are some aspects that are left out of the experience that are absolutely necessary for you to play, and that's where mentoring really has to pick up the ball. So. So hopefully, you know, if there's any younger people listening, you know, or professional musicians, you know, like to try and seek those kind of relationships out, because they're just as valuable as the classroom or listening to the record itself. You do need advice. You do need help through this whole experience.
I have one last question. Has studying improvisation always been easy for you? Like, for instance, when you were a younger student, you know, learning framework. And sometimes it seems as if the student can just stay in that work of learning how things are put together rather than the freedom within. And when I hear you play, everything just seems to be in motion. I mean, it can be the time, it can be just the pushing and pulling
tension and release I find fascinating with your playing. Lots of colors appear. How do you practice improvising?
Oh boy, because I might have students watching this, so I want to say it's a hard question to answer.
It is.
Do I practice it in like the way that the typical ways, like working on your scales? Not so much anymore. I did at one point. I did a lot of transcription. I still do transcription, but not learning solos as much anymore. But it's so hard to answer. I think I've learned a baseline amount of information now that I listen kind of in a little different way, where I'm listening to more conceptual things. And actually what I listen to a lot more in improvisation now is I listen more for like the rhythmic aspects of the way that people kind of change phrases, and the way that they, like more big picture, will play over the bar line sometimes, and sometimes what they put into the music that's not supposed to be there that interests me. That, but is it the nuts and bolts? Not so much anymore. But for my students who are listening, please still work on the nuts and bolts right now.
So we're going to conclude our conversation, and we're going to play a song for you. We have a great, fantastic bassist in the house, Dan Colton, who's going to join us in a minute. And but just I want you to know the amount of output that Scott has in our region is astounding. He's teaching at Oakland University. He has developed a summer jazz camp that is in its 12th year. And this is all ages, all instruments.
HelpUsJazz.com.
Absolutely. It's an amazing event that happens every summer. You lead your own big band, and I got to tell you, this is the latest release. This is called Mulgrew-ology, the Scott Gwinnell Jazz Orchestra. The record is, in my opinion, you can listen to it 1,000 times and get more out of it. It's fantastic. It's got great reviews. I'm going to tell you just a brief story. I was driving through St. Louis early on a Sunday morning and going to the left side of the dial, and all of a sudden I heard John LaBarbera has a show on the radio on NPR. It's syndicated where I was, and he just got done playing a track off the record. He's like, I don't know who Scott Gwinnell is, but he's got it going. And I called you.
Yeah,
right after that, I'm like, oh man. He said, I would love to meet this guy. It was fantastic. That's just one of a few recordings. You have Brush Fire, and you have Cass Quarter.
You have a Cass Quarter story?
That's a lot to talk about in all of these projects, but the amount of stuff that Scott is involved with is 5-star level output, and I just want to let everybody know that we're really grateful that you could come and meet some of these supporters of the concert house.
Well, I'm grateful to be here. Thank you so much for inviting me, and grateful to the people who, keep Kerrytown going. It's the absolute treasure.
So before we just break this clip and then we'll get to our instruments safely, I just want to thank the Friends of Jazz, Don Chisholm, all the supporters, great people that I have met through playing here. I would like to thank the staff here. Monica is just doing a fantastic job and still innovating during this special time that we need support. So if you like what you hear, I want to let you know that I will be conducting another conversation once. The next one for me is October 22nd, and that will be fascinating. Dr. Alberto Nassif, a frontline doctor, physician, who works at St. Joe, will join us, and he's a band leader of Al Guanco, a great Latin jazz band, and we'll get him to play for us. That's October 22nd. In November, Dennis Wilson, who lives here, he's really a fantastic conversationalist and trombonist, and he is a Count Basie alumnus. That's going to be super fun and swinging hard as well. And last but not least, in December will be bassist Marion Hayden. So keep an eye out on the Kerrytown website, and by all means, Scott Gwinnell, check out his website. He's got a lot. His records are there. He's got a book that we didn't get a chance to talk about, fascinating, about your educational journey, and so on. All right, so enough of that. We are just going to break this video clip, and then we're going to get to our instruments and close out with a tune. Thank you. All right.
Thank you for joining us for Jazz Chats with Cool Cats, a conversation concert and studio live production from Kerrytown Concert House. Please support our beloved artists and Kerrytown Concert House by heading to our website, kerrytownconcerthouse.com, to make a gift. And don't forget to check out our events listings of future live streamed concerts and sign up for our newsletter. Have a good evening.